you can say, the jewel of the Roman Empire in Syria, that they will regret the day their mother gave birth to them. He wanted to keep Damascus because he conquered it. He lost a lot of soldiers. The women, they see the men running away, they grab the swords and they start to fight. You have to sacrifice certain things to achieve something greater. And the Romans are confused. They didn't expect that. For 4 days, we've killed thousands of their men. They should be surrendering, but they're attacking us. I wanted martyrdom so badly. Here I'm lying down on my bed and I'm gonna die. It wasn't like your kings and your commanders that stayed behind and commanded the army. When they would conquer these lands that Khalid conquered, they would go to the Christians and say, you guys just keep ruling over, pay us some money and that's it. We don't really know how to rule over cities yet.
إنهم فتية آمنوا بربهم وزدناهم هدى.
When he hears this news in Medina, Abu Bakr reportedly he says that I will send such a ferocious lion upon the Romans that they will regret the day their mother gave birth to them. Meaning he's going to send Khalid bin Walid on them. And so he writes to Khalid and he says, leave a small garrison, leave a small amount of soldiers in Persia to protect what we've already conquered. And I want you to take your army as quick as you can to Syria and take command of all the armies there and bring us victory, basically. So now Khalid, he knows he has to go to Syria very, very quickly. But the journey is long, right? From Persia to Syria, it's a long journey, especially if you're going to go by on foot or by horse or camel and with a large army. So he gets his guide and they come up with this plan. And this is something Khalid, one of the most famous things he does as a military commander. They decide that they're going to cross from Persia to Syria using one very specific route, the quickest route. Not the easiest route, but the quickest route. Now this quick route, the problem is very quick, but the problem is there's no water, there's no food, there's not even water, but there's no water source, no well, no city, no village for them to get food from, rest of there's nothing. It's 5 days of a relentless and arduous march across the desert. And this is summer, by the way, so we know how hot it gets in Arabia in the summer, right? So that was his plan. But then how are they going to get that done? How will they attack and how will they get through this desert? So what they do is Khalid and his guide come up with this idea that we're going to get our camels to drink as much water as possible before we leave, so that their bellies are full of water. Then we're going to we're going to seal their mouths shut so that they can't eat any food. And then that way the water in their stomach will remain clean. And what we'll do is on our way, we're going to basically use them as water tanks. He uses camels as water tanks. And so on his way across the desert, every now and then they kill a few camels. They eat the meat of the camel and they drink the water that's still preserved in their belly. And so through this, he goes across from Persia to Syria in just 5 days. And this was known as the Desert March, one of the most famous things that Khalid bin Walid radiallahu anhu ever did. He gets there just in time. Some sources say he gets there during the middle of a battle, but the more, you can say, probabilistic thing to have happened is he got there just before the battle started. And this was the Battle of Ajnadayn. So he gets there as soon as this, just before this battle starts, and he takes command of all the Muslim armies there. He unites them together and he defeats the Romans. And this is a significant turning point. Battle of Ajnadayn is a very, very significant turning point in the history of Islam, because this is the first time. The Romans are the most powerful people in the world at that time. And so this is the first time the Muslims are able to defeat the Romans in a battle and make them run away, basically. So it shows that things are turning in the favor of the Muslims. It was a massive, massive victory for the Muslims. And from this point onwards, really, it's just victory after victory against the Romans. And that's why it's a significant turning point in Islamic history. After this Battle of Ajnadayn and a few other battles, he marches on to Damascus, you can say the jewel of the Roman Empire in Syria, a very, very important city, the center of power, of trade, of education. It was Damascus. So he goes there and he besieges Damascus. He besieges it. What do we mean by besieging a city? It means that you basically get your army, you surround the city, you stop any food, any water, anything going or coming out of the city. And the point is you starve them out. Or you attack the city and you try and get over the walls, basically. So that's, like a rudimentary explanation of what a siege is. And so he lays siege to the city. He splits his army up into different groups and he surrounds the sort of city on different sides. And the Romans try to send some small relief forces to attack the Muslims from the back, but it doesn't work. And he lays siege to the city, but Damascus, its fortifications are very strong. And again, Khalid, he was not prepared for a siege. He didn't have siege equipment with him. And also you have to understand, the Muslims are very new to warfare as well. They're not a well-trained army that's been fighting for centuries like the Romans. They're a new army. There are people who are shepherds, farmers a few days ago, and now they've joined the army. to try and earn martyrdom. That was the Muslim army. So they weren't well-trained soldiers. They knew nothing about siege warfare and tactics. So he besieges the city, but he can't get over the walls. So a Christian from Damascus, he gets a message out to Khalid and says, I will give you ladders, I will give you ropes, and I will help your army to come over the walls. And at the same time, I will tell you when to do it. When will be the perfect time to do it? And the perfect time, he said, is do it on this night. Because on this night, there's going to be a wedding. And the soldiers will be drunk. The walls won't be as heavily guarded. So it'll be easy for you to attack. So Khalid, on that night, he takes a few soldiers and he climbs over the walls, kills whatever drunk soldiers are guarding the walls. And then he opens the gates for the rest of the army to come through. And now, as his army is sort of killing the soldiers and making their way through the city, trying to get to the center, the Romans see this. So they get a letter out to Abu Ubaidah ibn al-Jarrah radiallahu anhu, who is commanding the other side of the army. So like I said, the city was being besieged on different sides. One side was Khalid, the other side was Abu Ubaidah. So as Khalid is pushing in with his army, conquering the city, they realize that we're not going to be able to stop them. So they get a letter to Abu Ubaidah on the other side and say, can you please give us some terms of surrender? So Abu Ubaidah, he doesn't know what's happening on the other side. So he accepts the terms of surrender and he marches into the city peacefully. So on one side, the Muslims are attacking the city and conquering it. On the other side, they're coming in peacefully. The two meet in the middle and they see each other and they're just a bit confused, like, what happened? You just walked into the city, but we just conquered it. And so a dispute emerges between Khalid and Abu Ubaidah. Khalid says, we've conquered this city, so they will fall under the rule of a population that's been conquered, meaning all the property is now ours. Abu Ubaidah says, no, they surrendered the city, so we have to abide by this terms of surrender, the peace treaty that we agreed with them. So there's a bit of a back and forth between the two, but eventually Khalid realizes that the purpose of these conquests are not for us to take the property and things like that, it's to spread the message of Islam. And if the treaty will do that, khalas, we accept the treaty and we leave it at that. So you have to understand what his objective was. That he wasn't doing these conquests for glory and for power. He was doing it to spread Islam. And this accepting of the peace treaty is a prime example of that. And so now with Damascus conquered, a large part of Syria has fallen under the rule of the Muslims. But what were the Romans doing? Whilst Damascus was being besieged and conquered, the Romans weren't just sitting idly by and saying, yeah, we'll just let them come and attack. They were getting another army ready. And this was going to be their main army, the most powerful army that they sent against the Muslims. So they get this army ready. It's led by a man called General Van. And they they begin making their way into Syria. And so Khalid sees this and he says that we've got a good position in Damascus, but staying here is not going to be the best thing for us to do, the most efficient thing for us to do. Because the problem with us staying here is, they might not be able to take the city, might be able to defend ourselves, but we'll lose the rest of the territory. Maybe they can even go and attack Medina. It's not going to be the best thing for us to do. Instead, if we can go somewhere else, make them fight us on favorable terms, on a place that will be favorable towards us, advantageous towards us, and we can defeat them, then that's it. The rest of Syria is there for the taking. So he decides to abandon Damascus. He leaves Damascus and he goes back. He retreats his army to a place called Yarmouk. And that's like a really important lesson for us to take. Now, sometimes when we're trying to achieve great things, sometimes you have to take small losses. You have to try and abandon certain things, certain ideals, or whatever certain small things you want to achieve in order to try and achieve something even greater. You have to realize that. You have to sacrifice certain things to achieve something greater. And that's why Khalid, he wanted to keep Damascus because he conquered it. He lost a lot of soldiers. But he knows that if I can leave Damascus now, defeat this army, not only will I take Damascus, but Quds, Jerusalem, and the rest of Syria will be there for us to take. So for him, it's a short-term loss with a long-term gain and a much greater gain. So he takes his army back to a place called Yarmouk. And why Yarmouk was good for them? Because the Muslim army got there first. And the way they positioned themselves is they know that they are much, much smaller than this Roman army that's coming. Khalid bin Walid at max maybe 40,000 soldiers, whereas the Romans at least above 100,000 soldiers. So they were heavily outnumbered. But what Khalid did is he positioned his army in a way that he couldn't be attacked from the side, only the front. The side and the back of his army would be protected. So he knows that he only has to fight them at the front. So the battle begins in August of 636 CE. The Battle of Yarmouk begins. 5 days this battle rages on for. The casualties mount quite heavily on both sides. The first day, the Roman army attacks and Khalid's army, the Muslim army, they take a lot of losses. But what Khalid did, one of the genius things he did was, and perhaps one of the most genius things he did for all these conquests, was his use of the cavalry. He employed a very light cavalry that could maneuver very quickly, go from A to B very, very quickly. And he used to use this cavalry a lot. He would lead it himself. So he kept his cavalry right at the back, at the middle, right at the back. So he could see everything that's going on. And whichever side of the army was being threatened and being hurt a lot, he would send his cavalry, he would lead the cavalry to go and support them. Once he supported that, he'd take the cavalry to go and support another side. So using this mobile light cavalry, he was able to try sort of keep the army stable. So first day, that's what happens. The Muslims take a lot of losses, Khalid stabilizes the battle. Second day, Muslims take even more losses. The Muslims are pushed back to their own camp, such that the women start to now fight. The women, they see the men running away, they grab the swords and they start to fight. And when the Muslims men, they see this, they start to feel a bit ashamed, and the courage comes back to them. And then they continue, they push the Romans back. And Khalid again uses his cavalry. Third day, same thing. Day 2 is actually known as the day of lost eyes, because the Romans fired so many arrows on that day that many Muslims lost their eyes on that day. One man who lost his eye on that day was Abu Sufyan, radiallahu anhu. He fought so bravely on that day, but even after losing an eye. And so that was called the day of lost eyes. Day 3, same thing, a lot of losses. By day 4, same thing is happening, but the Romans, they are now starting to get tired. For 4 days, they've launched a massive, massive attack on the Muslims. Every single day, for hours they're fighting. These Muslims just aren't giving way. And so they start to get tired. And on the night of the 4th day after fighting stops, Khalid realizes, now is the time to put my plan into action. So far, his plan was, let's tire out the Roman army. And when the time comes, we will defeat them. So on the 4th night, just before day 5 starts, he sends, again, the cavalry to go around into the desert and go behind the Roman army, because there's a bridge there. And that bridge, the Roman army can use to retreat. So Khalid sends a cavalry unit to stay by the bridge. The next day, Khalid, instead of waiting for the Romans to attack, he orders all his soldiers a general attack, orders all of them to go forward with whatever strength they have left, attack the Roman army. And the Romans are confused. They didn't expect that. They thought, for 4 days we've killed thousands of their men, and now suddenly they should be surrendering, but they're attacking us. They couldn't understand these things for them. It didn't make sense. So they were caught by surprise. And so Khalid attacks. The general is killed. General Van, he is killed in the battle. The soldiers don't know what to do. There's no command structure left anymore. And one thing with Khalid's army is, the Muslim army, they were very well structured. Khalid was always at the center. He was at the back, overseeing everything, knowing what to do when. The Roman army, they weren't that disciplined. They had one commander here, one commander there. Who do we listen to? What do we do? So General Van is killed. The command structure collapses and they begin to retreat. But as they begin to retreat, Khalid, he tells his cavalry, now I want you to attack. And they attack. They stop any, form of retreat, and they destroy the entire Roman army there. Because Khalid knew that like we said, if he wins this battle, then the Syria is there for the taking. So we have to make sure whatever happens in this battle, we're not going to allow them to retreat. We are going to make sure the Roman army is destroyed. So he destroys them at the Battle of Yarmouk. And this was Khalid's, you can say, his biggest victory. The greatest victory that historians remember him for was this, the Battle of Yarmouk. Battles that he had no right to win that battle. Most of these battles he fought, he never had any right to win them. He was so outnumbered. But alongside with his men, he was able to win this battle. And then just before this battle, actually, some people say it was after this battle, some people say during the battle. Most likely, again, before this battle, actually, Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu passes away. And he sends a letter to Abu Ubaidah and says to Abu Ubaidah, from now on, you will be the commander, not Khalid. He demotes Khalid. And Abu Ubaidah, after receiving this letter, he tells Khalid that basically you've been demoted and this is a letter from Umar radiallahu anhu. Khalid says, no problem, fine. I don't care. I'm not here to command an army. I'll fight with you if you want. You command me. Tell me what to do. I'll fight like a normal infantry soldier. It's not a problem for me. Why did Umar radiallahu anhu do this? That's the question. Now, historians debate different things. One, from a more sort of political standpoint, administration, military standpoint, Umar radiallahu anhu was, compared to Abu Bakr was very, he didn't have worry about taking too much control. He allowed a lot more delegation. Khalid's in command, you just do whatever you want. You don't have to consult me about everything. I trust you. That's why I've put you in command. Umar radiallahu anhu, he makes the government a lot more centralized, the Muslim government. Anything that you want to do, if you want to move your army from Damascus to Aleppo or to Jerusalem, whatever, you need to make sure I approve it first. So the command structure was very different. The administration was very different during Umar radiallahu anhu's time. And Umar radiallahu anhu didn't think that Khalid would be good at doing that. Because Khalid, he sees an opportunity, he goes for it. For him, if the opportunity is there, I'm going to take it. He doesn't like this waiting around. But Abu Ubaidah, he's a lot more calm, he's a lot more patient, you can say a lot more cautious. Obviously, that doesn't mean Khalid is wrong. It's just Abu Ubaidah being more cautious, he's a bit more slower in his battles. Khalid being a bit more, outgoing and courageous, he's a bit more faster with his victories. But Umar, he wanted, all these conquests are happening, we need to slow down a little bit. That was also his idea. The other main idea is that people started to think that victory was because Khalid, not because of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. People started saying, as long as Khalid is with us, we will be victorious. Umar didn't like that. He saw in the long run, people's tawheed can become affected because of this. That people are now thinking victory comes from Khalid and not Allah. So he wanted to show the people, it doesn't matter whether Khalid is with you or not. Allah is the one that is responsible for your victory. So if Khalid is there or not, you can still be victorious. If Khalid is there or not, you can still lose. It's up to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He wanted to remind the people of that. And that's why he demoted him. But at the Battle of Yarmouk, Abu Ubaidah, he realized his weakness and he said, I'm not as great as Khalid. Khalid is, when it comes to military leadership, I can't compare with him. So just for this battle, Khalid, take command. You take command, tell us what to do. And then after that, you can give command back to me. So that's most likely what happened during in relation to Khalid bin Walid being demoted. After this, after the Battle of Yarmouk, Khalid is sent now to with Abu Ubaidah, serving under Abu Ubaidah, to go and besiege Jerusalem. They take Jerusalem, comes under the property of the Muslims, under the rule of the Muslims. Khalid is then sent by Abu Ubaidah to go and conquer more cities in northern Syria and even parts of southeast Turkey, you can say. Even these parts Khalid goes and conquers. But then towards the end of his life, he retires from fighting and he spends his days, he's appointed as a governor of a city in Syria. Now he's been appointed as a governor there. But what happens is rumors begin to spread that Khalid is being unfair. He is giving war spoils and money out to people unfairly. Those people who are his family and those people who fought with him, he's giving more to them than other Muslims. So people begin to complain. And so when these complaints begin to spread, most likely, obviously, we know Khalid is a companion. He's not going to be someone who's unfair and unjust, right? He's called the sword of Allah. He's not going to be someone who's unfair and unjust. So whatever did happen, happened. Maybe something happened, rumors spread. And because the sources here, it's very difficult to know what actually happened. And so Khalid bin Walid who is demoted from that as well, from being a governor, and then what he does afterwards, even after being demoted from being a governor, he spends the rest of his days still in that same city with his family, isolated from politics, from the military, any of these type of things. And he spends his time reciting Quran. He would recite Quran for 5-6 hours without a break. And he would say that when I was doing jihad, when I was fighting, I didn't have time to recite Quran, to pray extra nafil prayers and do all these things. But now that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has removed me from that, I am able to do this. So for him, it wasn't a punishment. For him, he still saw it as a blessing. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took me away from one good deed, but now has given me an opportunity to do other great deeds. Then finally, and this was really for the last 4 years, until the final days of his life come, and people now, he's lying on his deathbed and people are coming to visit him. And he shows them, he uncovers his arms and shows them all these scars he has. And he says, look, even on my body, there's not a hand span on my body where there isn't a scar from a battle. Every battle I went into, I looked for martyrdom. The companions would say about him, when Abu Bakr would ask, how was Khalid in battle? The companions would say, if martyrdom was given to the one who was always at the forefront of the battle, who was always at the thickest of the fighting, Khalid would be the first person in every battle to achieve martyrdom. He wasn't like your kings and queens and your kings and your commanders in Western literature or even in Eastern literature that stayed behind and commanded the army, or the king who dispatched his army. He was a man who led the army from the front himself in every single battle. He didn't wait around and say, you go attack there, I'll wait here. No, he led his army himself. He was with his soldiers all the time. He spent more time. He used to say that being on the battlefield or in the tent waiting for the battle is more beloved to me than the first night of my wedding. He wanted to be there in the battle, fighting to elevate the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on this world. And so he's on his deathbed and he's showing these people, look at all these scars. I wanted martyrdom so badly. Here I'm lying down on my bed and I'm going to die on my bed. And the people, and he would cry. And the people told him that, Khalid, don't you understand that the day the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ gave you the title, the sword of Allah, it meant that you would never ever be defeated in battle. You could never ever be killed in battle. Because if you were killed in battle, it would mean that the sword of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had been destroyed in battle by a kafir, an infidel. And that could never happen. But still Khalid in his heart, he understood that. In his heart, he wanted martyrdom so badly. That's why he was in these battles all the time. And then he said that, when Umar demoted me, at first, I was like, obviously, as a human being, it's not going to sit well with you. You've done all these great things. He didn't have a problem. He accepted it. It doesn't stop him in his heart from feeling a little bit down and disappointed and upset. He said, I felt a bit disappointed and upset. But I understand that what Umar did, he did for the betterment of the Muslims. And I have nothing in my heart against Umar radiallahu anhu. I have nothing but love for him. And so he passes away with the last word saying, may the eyes of the cowards never sleep. And Khalid radiallahu anhu passes away. And after he passes away, everyone mourns him. People are so in a state of grief because with his death, more so than most other companions with him, because of the great things he achieved. When Umar radiallahu anhu, when his possessions were given back to Umar radiallahu anhu, his sword was sent back to Umar radiallahu anhu, Umar radiallahu anhu began to weep. And he says that, reportedly he said that if I hadn't demoted Khalid, then he could have conquered all of Europe and Asia himself. And he says that, Abu Bakr was a far greater, I understood people far better than I ever will. In his heart, he felt a bit bad that he demoted Khalid. He felt upset that, did I do wrong by him? Did I take away his rights? Even after all the things he achieved, I demoted him. And so Khalid radiallahu anhu passes away in the year around 642 CE. And really his legacy, which military commander, which sultan, which king, which child, when they read the story of Khalid bin Walid, isn't motivated by him. Me personally, Khalid bin Walid, his story is the one that really interested me into Islamic history. Before this, I loved history, whatever, random history would study. I loved it. But when we were studying Seerah and we got to this Battle of Mu'tah and we hear about the bravery of Khalid bin Walid, it's so inspirational and motivational. How does a man achieve things like this? How does a man conquer Syria and Persia? Which ruler, we spoke about the Ottomans, Muhammad al-Fatih, Sultan Sulaiman, how can they not have been motivated by Khalid bin Walid radiallahu anhu? If he hadn't achieved the things he did, Islam wouldn't have spread as far as it did. We are Muslims here today in Britain, again, like we said, because of the efforts of perhaps the people who came more recently, but the foundations of all that was laid by Khalid radiallahu anhu, not just in terms of conquest, but spiritually, ideologically as well. Everyone is motivated by which martyr, in Palestine, all these people are dying. In Sudan, all these people are being martyred. Which one of them aren't motivated by Khalid bin Walid radiallahu anhu? Which one of them fear martyrdom? The story of Khalid bin Walid is something that all of us should hold very, very dear in our hearts, have a very special connection with it, especially given the context of today. To not have fear, to be brave against whatever the odds are. Obviously, many of us won't be put in the same situation that Khalid bin Walid radiallahu anhu was put in, but we can still take so many sort of lessons from his life. One we spoke about was this idea of, sometimes taking small losses for a greater gain. Another one was still humility, the humility he had. He was a great military commander, could have had so much wealth. He could have just taken Damascus and say, all right, guys, I'm going to stay in Damascus. All the wealth is mine. I conquered the city. You guys continue to fight. No, the next day he was outside in the tent sleeping on the floor. That's Khalid bin Walid. That's the humility he had. And so we should try and develop that same humility in our life. No matter how many things we may have thought that we've achieved, still remain humble. Understand that all this victory, whatever it is, anything we have, it comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Another one we can take from his life is obedience to those people who are above us, right? Our parents, those people in authority over us. Sometimes we think that, we know it all, right? We're young and we're ambitious and we're passionate and we know it all and we want to do everything. But when those people who are above us sometimes tell us, relax, calm down, this is not the best thing for you to do, take that advice, use it to try, because they know what's better for you. Just like Umar radiallahu anhu knew what was better for Khalid than everyone else. He didn't want people to start worshipping Khalid. What would Khalid tell Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the Day of Judgment? if people started worshipping Khalid? What would Khalid tell Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? But so the same thing, Umar understood what was better for Khalid and was better for the Muslims. We try that when those people above us tell us the same thing, we try and take their advice on board. And obviously, there's so many more lessons that we can take from the life of Khalid bin Walid radiallahu anhu. But his intelligence, maybe that's one of the main things to take away. His ability to understand people, understand so many different things, and use all of that, the patience he had on the battlefield, taking losses, all these different things. Reflect on his life and see what lessons can you take that you can apply to your life today, whatever achievements, whatever ambitions and goals you want to achieve. Khalid bin Walid radiallahu anhu used his life to try and take away lessons from that. And so we leave it there for the life of Khalid radiallahu anhu. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be pleased with him, accept all his efforts, pleased with all those who fought alongside him, and allow us to, try and understand his legacy and live by that. So in the battle itself, number one is where he was. So he wouldn't position himself on like the side or anything like that. He would always be at the back of the army, but in the middle. So he can see everything that's going on. And then anytime he wanted to give an order, he would send a soldier to go and do it. Nobody was allowed to act independently. So let's say he's in the middle, right? The right side wants to attack. They can't do that until Khalid gives permission. So he made sure that everyone knew he was the commander and everything had to come from him. Whereas with the Romans, there was different commanders. The overall command structure was very complicated. Nobody knew who was actually in command. The right side would just attack. The left side would just attack. And the guy in the middle who says, wait, the emperor made me the commander. What are you attacking for? But nobody used to just listen to them, basically. The command structure was wasn't very rigid, you can say. But here, everyone knew it has to go back to Khalid. One story, he was in a battlefield before the Battle of Yarmouk. And a very famous quote of his, that at the battle itself, when the Muslims were lining up, the soldiers, they saw how large the Romans were. And so one of them, in his emotions running high, and he goes, how few are the Muslims and how many are the Romans? And Khalid, he disciplines him and says, no, instead say, how many are the Muslims and how few are the Romans? Because victory lies in, courage and strength lies in how much victory you have and how much belief you have in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In another story, Khalid, all on his own, in the night, he would go and he would stand right next to the enemy's camp, the enemy's army. And so the other companions told him, why do you do that for? If something happens to you, you're the commander. We don't have a commander if something happens to you. You need to be careful with the things you do. And Khalid says that, don't you know the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, that he says that the difference between those who remember Allah and those who don't remember Allah are like the living and the dead. And so he said, what can 100,000 dead do against one man who is living? What can all the non-Muslims do against me? I am the one who's alive because I remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so that's, I guess, another lesson to take, right? The spirituality he had within himself. Sometimes we neglect that. In trying to achieve our ambition, sometimes, we want to work. There's this new idea of trying to be productive 24/7. I don't, people neglect the whole family in this pursuit of trying to be productive. And we neglect our own religion. I'm not going to go to the masjid because I've got a bit of work to do. What's more important? Or I couldn't read the Quran today because I was a bit caught up with this new business plan I'm making, or with this new idea I have, this new... The heart of it all is our connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's how it was for Khalid. In the daytime, the Roman soldiers, when they would go and sometimes spy on the Muslim camps. And what would they say? They would say, in the morning, they are like lions fighting. At nighttime, they're like monks. Because all they do is, they don't sleep. At nighttime, they just worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in the morning, they fight. It's spiritual strength that they had. And the same spiritual strength that we need today in our lives. And you'll see that will help you achieve so much more. Like, for example, staying up after Fajr and doing whatever work you want to do. We know that there's barakah in the morning. That spiritual strength is what will help us stay away from sins. Many of us, we struggle with addictions. We struggle with so many things, sins. But that spiritual strength that they had at night time, they would spend all their night worshipping. If we can take some of these practices in to develop our spiritual strength, you will see that we'll be able to overcome whatever sins we're doing. Just like Khalid radiallahu anhu. Not that he was doing sins, but he used that spiritual strength so that in the morning he could lead his armies. So we sort of need that same thing in our life as well. When it comes to secondary sources, more modern ones, there's not many that have been done by Muslims, but if you want to know all about the conquests, there's one really good one called Futuh al-Buldan by Al-Waqidi. Not Al-Waqidi, sorry. Al-Buldani. Futuh al-Buldan. It means the conquest of cities, and it gives an entire account of the Muslim conquests of Persia and Syria. That's one of the most reliable primary sources. Another primary source is Futuh al-Sham by Al-Waqidi. This one's a bit more, the narrations are a bit more questionable in that, but still it's a good way to try and understand more generally all the things that happened. The only problem with these things, as opposed to the Ottoman era that we've been speaking about, where there's so many more primary sources, the Muslims don't really write things down at that time. They're still a people who are developing. When they would conquer these lands that Khalid conquered, they would just go there, and the government they would set up, they would go to the Christians and say, you guys just keep ruling over, pay us some money, and that's it. We don't really know how to rule over cities yet. We haven't developed that much yet. It's really in the Khilafah, the Umayyad dynasty, that's when the Muslims established proper systems of government. During the time of the Rashidun Khilafah, there's a centralized system in Medina, but everyone else is, they conquer these lands. It's like, you guys just rule and pay us some money because you guys are better at ruling than us, basically. So just do it for now. We'll learn and we'll develop. We'll leave it then. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept it from everyone. May Allah bless you all for attending. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك وصلى اللهم وسلم وبارك على سيدنا مولانا ونبينا وحبيبنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.